Hi, I'm Benj. This is Doing Outdoors. And if you remember back to a couple of videos ago, I said I was going to get a contractor in to fence the top field off. Well, we now have a fully enclosed top field, as well as a separate pen around where the orchard's going to be. It only took them 4 days to get this fence up. But what it's left us with is basically this top field where I'm stood now is fully penned in. This is about 6.5 acres. It's a little bit rough grazing at the minute, as the ground's not been properly farmed or looked after for a number of years. The majority of this is very rough grazing. Towards the back, behind the copse, the grass does get better, but especially this side there's a lot of thistle. But we are mowing it to try and improve the quality of the grass. We don't have a tractor, so the mower that we've got is just a normal walk behind petrol mower. But you can see this area. My dad's been mowing this along with the chicken tractor. The chicken tractor is pulled up and down. That does a very good job. Not only do they eat everything, but their droppings also fertilise the ground. But like I say, we've got this pen now, 6.5 acres, and in some areas where the grass is decent, it's growing very well. Here's one patch, not so much weed in it at all. Perfect for eating if you're a cow or a sheep, although the sheep like it a little shorter. But the plan is to get 2 or 4 cows in, and what they're going to do is mow the grass for us and give us some meat in return. And I'm stood just on the boundary of this new fence, which is the boundary to the land. You can see it just behind me. And this is the place that I stood when I was going to tell you about the fence. So the type of fencing that we've had is a standard livestock fence basically. You've got the sheep netting, or stock net as it's known, and then 2 strands of barbed wire. And that goes all the way around this top field. You can see that everything is growing up. We're now just into the second week of May 2022. And we desperately need to get some livestock in here to keep this grass down. But we've not been sitting around idle whilst these jobs have been done by contractors around the place. We've collected eggs off our own chickens, put those in the incubator and hatched those. Those are now 4 weeks old. We didn't only hatch our own eggs, but I also purchased some eggs of some particular breeds that I wanted to get hold of off eBay and hatch those. The majority of the eggs that we've hatched are Indian game cross our other chickens, which are they're a bit mongrelish. I couldn't tell you how many different chickens they're made up of, but I'm hoping that because I've put the Indian game cockerel across them, those chickens are going to create some decent meat birds. But one of the pure breed birds that I've just bought in are the white rock, and it's the white rock that I was missing to create my own broiler chicken, basically my version of the Cornish cross, which is a white rock cross an Indian game. So they've hatched. I've got 12 white rock. I put a dozen eggs in and I got a dozen chicks out, and that's a very good success rate from eggs that I bought off eBay. The other eggs that I purchased were Rhode Island Red. I bought 12 of those. 8 were fertile, but unfortunately only 5 hatched. Not quite sure what went wrong with those, but a real good success rate with the white rocks. So as long as I can keep hold of all those chickens, I've still got 2 Indian game cockerels right now. I did hatch another 4 Indian game, but next year I'm going to be trying to cross the Indian game with the white rock. There's 2 ways you can do it: Indian game cockerel to a white rock hen, or a white rock cockerel to an Indian game hen. I don't know which way round it's got to be, but I'll figure that out next year. So I'm hopeful next year we'll have a proper meat bird, or as we're used to buying from the shops anyway. The birds that we bought on last year, I ate the cockerels and they were good. Very big in the leg, not so good on the breast. The meat was very dark. The flavour was phenomenal really for chicken compared to what you're used to buying in the supermarkets. I didn't do any videos on me dispatching and eating those. I wasn't really expecting good quality meat. I should have done a video really, but this year with the chicks that we've hatched, we'll be doing a video on those, see how they turn out. However, over the course of the last 4 or 5 weeks we have had broody chickens. So we've allowed 2 of those broodies to sit on their own eggs, and one of those has been sitting 3 weeks today. So if she's done a good job, she should have some chicks under her. So I'm now at the first chicken that we let sit on eggs. Now these chicks should be hatching today, and I have just sat here quietly for 5 minutes. Obviously she's sat really tight, doesn't want to get up, doesn't want to move, although she's not clucking to the babies like I've seen in the past, but I have heard some cheeping from underneath her, so I'm fairly confident that we have something hatched. Don't know how many. I put a different selection of eggs under her from around the farm, so we'll just have to see. But she's sat really tight at the minute. And then sat in the nest box of this other coop, there's another hen. Now she's been sat on eggs for 2 weeks now. She's got 1 more week to go. She's sat really tight. I fully expect her to have a good hatch. I put 11 eggs under her. She's a bigger bird. She's a cross Buff Orpington, so she's really fluffy. Loads of feather. She can cover a large space. And you can see her in there. She's sat tight. Although there is some eggshell in there as well, so she too has broken an egg at some point. But hopefully, fingers crossed, she too will do the business and we'll have more chicks. There's nothing better than seeing baby chicks running with their mother. I like using an incubator. It serves its purpose well, but letting the birds do it more naturally is definitely better to see, and I think more beneficial for the birds. And one other thing I haven't talked about for a couple of weeks are the pigs. Now they are getting huge. Big Bertha and Bacon are pregnant. Bacon's due to give birth in about 3 weeks' time. Big Bertha's going to be a week after. But their bellies are getting massive. You can see that their nipples are getting large. The area around the nipple is starting to swell, which is an indication that they're starting to form milk. it's not going to be long before we're welcoming baby piglets to the place, which everybody is really excited about. We've not seen baby piglets, or at least brand new baby piglets before, so that's something we're all looking forward to. We've also been cracking on with the greenhouse. Now, in the last couple of days, I have started setting up for my no-dig setup within the greenhouse. I have laid down layers of cardboard. On top of the cardboard, I have put compost mixed with horse manure. Now, the horse manure that I'd got is off a local farmer. It's well rotted. I went right to the back of his heap. He's got a huge heap. He collects horse manure from a few liveries around our local area. And at the end of the year, when he's working his fields, he'll spread that muck on his own field. But there was a small pile towards the back, which is probably left over from the year before. So I'll say it might be as old as 18 months old. Well rotted. However, I purchased some compost as well, just to mix in with it to try and make a real decent growing media. And I've done 3/4 of the greenhouse. We've got all of my tomato plants that I've grown in one side. I've got some sweet peppers along the back and some hot peppers down the side, which are mostly jalapeno. And I've put a couple of butcherlockia in, the ghost pepper. I do like things hot, so fingers crossed we're going to get a decent harvest off those. And I've also tried the potatoes in a bucket. It's the first year I've ever tried growing potatoes in a bucket. When you watch all the videos off YouTube, it seems to make an amazing amount of sense, because there's one thing I hate, and that's digging potatoes up. I always miss one or two, and they'll grow through my vegetables the next year, which causes havoc sometimes. But this time I've got two varieties going. I've got a first early in the 5 buckets to the left, and then the six buckets to the right, they're a second early. When we had the fencing contractors in to put the fence up, I chose a line for the fence to go down, which is in line with some existing hedgerows, but because the place has been so unkept for many years, there were rather large trees in the way, so they had to clear quite a lot to get the fence in where I wanted. And unfortunately, I've not had chance to get on top of this problem yet. This is just one of the piles. You can see there where the fence has gone, and that's just to the side of an old hawthorn hedgerow that would have run all the way along here. We're now walking into the orchard where the bees are. This is the separate compound that we've also had fenced in, and this is so that we can run some animals within the orchard to keep the grass down, eat any windfall when the orchard becomes established. But I've really got to get onto these piles of trees, and we're going to cut out anything decent, thicker than your wrist, for wood burning at home, fuel for the fire. All the small stuff we're not going to burn will turn into wood chip. Another job that is taking up a lot of time and causing me quite a lot of worry are the bees. Now, this is my first true season with the bees. When I got these colonies, it was very late in the season. It was late July, close to August in fact. And because they were swarms themselves, they were really quite small. So to look after them up to winter and over winter was stress-free. they were expanding, they had the room to do so. However, because they did so well through the winter, they were very big colonies come spring, and I wasn't quite prepared for what was to come really. The swarm cells that you have to deal with, the manipulations. I've lost quite a few bees, I'm sure. One of my hives is totally queenless. The other 2 hives, I noticed that queen cells drawn on the front of these combs. So I was under the influence that these were supersedure cells. They were going to replace the queen because she was failing or whatever. The week later when I inspected, there were at least 5 more possibly swarm cells. However, they were all capped, and I couldn't find the queen. So I thought that she may have already swarmed. So I thought I'll just leave those hives as they were. But as a bit of insurance, I set up an old hive within the apiary as a kind of lure box for any swarm to use. And luckily, one's gone in. I'm not sure which hive it's come from. I've got a slight feeling it's come from this unpainted small hive, because although there weren't many bees in there to begin with, or on my last inspection, which was only a week ago, there seems to be quite a lot less going in and out of the hive right now. But this old dark looking hive that's standing on a pile of supers, we have actually caught a swarm in there. So this is the used, rather old beehive that I put here as a bait box for any bees that wanted to swarm. And you can see from the behaviour of these bees that they are definitely using the place. There's not so many bees moving around this morning. It is quite cool, but I've got no doubt in my mind that there is a colony in here. I'm due to check all the hives today as my weekly inspection, but I'll leave this one until next week, so they will have had at least 10 days to settle in. But you can see on the floor in front of their entrance, you can see all the debris that they're clearing out of this old hive. There's piles of dead bees, cobweb, all manner of nasty bits that were in amongst the frames of this old hive, and these bees are clearing it all out. So I'm really quite happy that I've caught a swarm. Hopefully I'll catch another one. I've got another 2 hives around the corner, another 2 old hives. I'm going to bring those round today when I've got my suit on and I'm doing my inspections, and I'll set those up in this area just as an insurance policy basically. I know a little bit more about how to control the swarming of these bees. I've been doing a lot of research, but just as an insurance policy, I'll keep these old hives in the area just in case I miss something, and hopefully they'll swarm into one of my boxes. So as it stands, I have 4 colonies. This one behind me, which is totally, or has been totally, queenless, although I tried putting a frame of eggs in off one of the other hives in the hope that they would draw an emergency queen cell. But after 2 weeks there was no emergency queen cell drawn. Now, a lot of experts or people that know more than me say that if they hadn't drawn a queen cell on those frames of eggs, then potentially there was a virgin queen in there. So I'm hopeful when I check today I might see some eggs. but I'm hopeful. The hive is very active still. They're still bringing lots of pollen. They're still doing a lot, although they're not doing so much today. It's quite cool. The hive that is busy though is that dark one. I only noticed that swarm in there as of Thursday. Wednesday it was dead, one or two sniffing about. When I came Thursday it was absolutely heaving, and now they've settled in. They've started cleaning the hive out, which is a clear sign that they're planning to stay. And I've also witnessed numerous bees carrying pollen into the hive, which is a very good sign. So as we've got the one up the top painted, lots of bees in there. I expected those to swarm, although it could have been a supersedure. This hive, I was expecting it to be a supersedure, but I believe they have swarmed into there. They are now 2 colonies. And this hive, well, it was totally queenless last time I looked in, and it had been for the 2 inspections previous to that. But with them not drawing those eggs out into an emergency queen cell, I was hopeful that there was a virgin queen knocking about. And my hope is that she has been out, been mated, and is now laying eggs. So that's the bees spoke about. Now let's talk about the orchard. The orchard's not looking too bad, although I haven't mowed since the last week in April. Because this time last year this was all weeds. We whacked it back this winter to make space for the trees. So now in spring, when it was growing back, there were a lot of dock leaves, thistles and other weeds growing through. And usually we'd let it go a bit. There were a lot of flowers in there for these pollinators like the bees, but because I want this to be grass, I want to mow it on a regular basis and give the grass a chance to come through. But we're quite a strong believer in this no mow May, to give all the pollinators a good chance and a varied amount of food. So it's a little bit wild at the minute, but come June I'm going to mow it again, and I'll mow it every 2 weeks just to try and promote some good grass growth. But ultimately the trees that I have planted within this orchard are doing very well. Most have got leaves on. Here's another. We've got blossom. We've got leaf. There's only one tree that hasn't sprouted any leaf, and that's a Victoria plum. For whatever reason, that hasn't taken, but the rest are looking good. So that about brings everyone up to speed where we are with the land. Next weekend I'm going to be turning the old railway carriage into 2 farrowing pens for the pregnant pigs. So I'll make sure that I bring my camera with me and document that a little better than I have done all these other projects that I've been cracking on with. But it's a lovely day here today. It's forecast rain, but there's not many grey clouds in the sky right now. So that's it from me today. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you on the next one.